Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere steamy. Literally. Imagine this. A towering stone archway leads you into a labyrinth of echoing voices, dripping stone walls, and a scent that can only be described as ancient sweat meets overripe olives. You've arrived at a Roman public bathhouse, the heart of daily life in ancient Rome. It sounds relaxing, right? Well, give it a few minutes. You'll soon be longing for your drafty modern shower. Because here's the thing. Roman baths weren't exactly a luxury spa. They were more like a chaotic stew of half-naked strangers, sharp smells and boiling politics. You, a time-travelling outsider in cheap sandals, are woefully unprepared for what's coming. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start the day bright-eyed and ready to blend in with the Romans. You've spent the morning wandering the market, marvelling at amphora and street performances, your eyes still adjusting to the sheer amount of tunics and exposed limbs. But by midday, someone mentions Thermi, and like any curious traveller, you follow the crowds downhill. Your first impression of the bathhouse is a sensory ambush. The outer courtyard is buzzing. Olive oil vendors bark out their prices. Musicians, probably banned from playing inside, noodle out slow flute melodies. Children in miniature togas dart between columns, and a man nearby is arguing passionately about cabbage imports. You're already overwhelmed, and you haven't even passed the entrance arch yet. You shuffle toward the gate and immediately get stuck behind a trio of sweating gladiator trainees, arguing about how many sesterces it costs to get their strigil sharpened. You wonder if there's a separate line for confused tourists. There isn't. The atrium looms ahead, a wide open space of cracked marble and dusty columns. You catch a glimpse of the palestra, the open-air exercise yard, and your hopes for a relaxing soak shrink considerably. Dozens of men amid wrestle, covered in sweat, oil, and probably pride. No towels in sight. You take a breath and step inside. Immediately, you're swallowed by the thick, wet air, like walking into someone else's warm laundry pile. The noise is intense, slapping feet on marble, laughter bouncing off stone, a chorus of voices layered in Latin you can't follow. It's not chaos exactly. More like a very busy beehive that also smells faintly of old soup. The walls are painted in scenes of half-naked gods lounging with nymphs, presumably meant to relax you. Instead, they make you more aware of how underdressed and overdressed you are at the same time. Your plain tunic sticks to your back with sweat. The people here are practically professionals. They strut through steam with the confidence of seasoned bathers. You, however, hesitate at every new doorway like it's a trap. Just ahead, the Tepidarium, or changing room, is a buzzing hive of disrobing humanity. But we'll get to that soon enough. For now, you're still standing at the edge, trying not to trip on the mosaic tile floor which, fun fact, was designed to get slick and dangerous when wet. You overhear a bearded man bragging about how these bathhouses used to be free, sponsored by emperors to win public favour. But now, a coin per person. Inflation. Even in antiquity. You dig in your coin pouch. Just 3 bronze asses and a smudged token. You glance at the doorman, who's glaring like he's caught you trying to sneak in with a goat. You smile nervously, palm your coin, and shuffle forward. But more on the entrance fee fiasco in the next section. For now, you take in the scene. A thin trail of steam snakes around a corner to your left. Someone claps loudly, calling for a slave to bring more towels. A man holding a fig, yes, a literal fig, is lecturing a younger bather on the virtues of cold plunges. This is not just a place to wash. It's Rome's social hub. Gym, spa, political salon and Twitter feed, all rolled into one. Senators soak here, bakers complain here, philosophers mutter theories while getting exfoliated. Everyone is here, and now so are you, and it's only getting weirder from here. The doorman eyes you like you just insulted Jupiter. He's broad-shouldered, bald, and holding a wooden tally stick, 1 notch per person allowed in. He doesn't say a word, just gestures toward your coin pouch with a flick of his eyebrows, which should be registered weapons in a passive-aggressive war. You fumble with your coins, bronze asses. You try not to giggle at the name, but let's be honest, It's been a long day and your brain is melting. The doorman is not amused. You hand him what you think is the right fee. He squints, bites one of the coins, nods slightly, then jerks his thumb toward the interior. You're in. Barely. Inside the Tepidarium, you're greeted with chaos. A huge chamber with benches, stone cubbies carved into the walls, and a dozen naked men arguing about chariot races. You freeze, unsure of the protocol. Do you undress now? Do you fold your tunic? Is there a coat check? Apparently the answer is yes to all, but no one's explaining. An older man with a thick belly walks past you, nods toward the wall, and says something in Latin that might be, "Don't trust the kids." You blink. Then you realise he's warning you about the thieves. This is where the drama begins. You eye the cubbies. They're unguarded but labelled with etched symbols. Maybe names, maybe curses. You choose one with a picture of a fish because it seems friendly. Carefully, you stuff your tunic inside and realise you have no idea what to do with your sandals. You leave them beside it. Risky move. Suddenly a boy runs past, completely naked except for a bronze chain necklace, laughing and holding someone else's belt. The owner shouts and chases him, slipping on a wet patch of floor and landing with a sound that might haunt you forever. Everyone laughs, including a nearby philosopher who mutters something about the futility of material goods. You're next to strip down, slowly, painfully, like a debut performance in a school play where you forgot your lines and your dignity. You try to copy the others, left shoulder first, then pull down, but the fabric sticks to your sweaty skin like guilt. Finally you succeed, revealing far more of yourself than you ever wanted to in front of strangers. A slave approaches with a basket. He asks if you want your clothes oiled and stored. You stare blankly. He repeats it, this time slower. You nod, unsure, and hand over your bundle. He raises an eyebrow. Maybe he's judging your fashion choices. Maybe he's just bored. Either way, your clothes vanish into the shadows with him. You hope they'll come back. Then it hits you. You're completely naked, in a room full of equally naked strangers. No privacy curtains, no stalls, just flesh, marble, and the distant gurgle of a plumbing system that's technically impressive but deeply unsettling. You try to cover yourself, but realise no one else is bothering. They're too busy arguing, stretching, or casually exfoliating with tools that resemble gardening equipment. One man has a strigil made of bronze shaped like a fishhook. Another is heating a pot of oil over a small brazier, like he's about to deep fry a philosophy student. You make your way across the slick floor, doing your best not to slip or touch anything. A young man greets you with a grin and offers some advice. Don't stay in the caldarium too long, or your ears will ring for hours. You nod, pretending you know what a caldarium is. Fun historical fact. Entrance fees varied wildly depending on the bathhouse and the time of day. Sometimes, during festivals or under generous emperors, admission was free, but on regular days like today it was just enough to be annoying. You've officially paid the Roman equivalent of $1 to be disoriented and nude in public, and then there's the fringe bit. Some scholars speculate bathhouse staff intentionally confused foreign visitors just for fun. Whether it was part of a social hierarchy ritual or simply boredom-fueled mischief is unclear. But as the slave returns with a small bronze tag that apparently represents your clothes, you wonder if this is all an elaborate prank. Your gaze drifts toward a large mural on the far wall. Neptune riding dolphins surrounded by semi-nude figures. The eyes seem to follow you. It's unnerving, but you try to act cool. You sit on a bench, only to leap back up because the stone is freezing. The man beside you chuckles and offers a towel, but it's already wet. With what? You don't ask. From somewhere nearby, a shout erupts. Someone's lost their bracelet. You hear a slapping chase and a few choice curses. The doorman appears briefly, holding a stick threateningly, before disappearing again like an angry mythological creature. You begin to wonder if there's a right way to navigate this place. Scholars remain divided on whether bathhouses had consistent etiquette or whether everything was improvised chaos. Judging by what you're seeing, an elderly man doing calisthenics next to a teenager eating grapes, your guess is the latter. You finally take a deep breath and accept it. You're one of them now. A bather. A lounger. A person who walks confidently in damp spaces with nothing but skin and sarcasm. But just as you're starting to adjust, a heavily oiled man with a curved bronze scraper approaches. He points at you, grins, and says something about strigiling the filth of travel. You freeze. because it's time to learn what Roman bathing really means. You freeze mid-step as the oiled man gestures again. He's tall, broad, and dripping with a kind of confidence only found in people who are both entirely nude and entirely in control. In one hand, he holds a curved bronze strigil, the Roman version of a body scraper. In the other, a small flask of thick greenish oil. Not soap, not shampoo, just oil. You glance around, hoping someone might intervene, but everyone else is too busy getting scraped, chatting about tax reforms or shouting about which team won yesterday's ludi. Your fate is sealed. He beckons once more, and you step forward reluctantly, like a nervous goat at a sacrificial festival. Here's the thing they don't tell you in history books. Romans didn't wash like we do. There were no foamy lathers, no bubbly scented soaps. Instead, they covered their skin in oil, sometimes perfumed, sometimes not, then scraped it off, along with the dirt, sweat, and anything else clinging to the body. You're about to experience this firsthand. The oiled man gives you a once-over, nods with the solemnity of a priest, then pours the lukewarm oil directly onto your chest. It trickles down slowly. Your skin immediately feels slipperier than a politician dodging a bribe accusation. He rubs it in with practiced hands, then raises the strigil. The first scrape is startling. Not painful exactly, but deeply uncomfortable, like being licked by a cold metal cat with anger issues. He moves methodically, shoulders, arms, down the back, around the legs. You try not to squeal when he reaches your ribs. He chuckles softly. Apparently you're ticklish. A nearby man offers encouragement. It gets better after the third time. You make a noise somewhere between a laugh and a whimper. Fun fact, Roman athletes and soldiers often carried personal strigils, like gym rats with customized towels today. There were even luxury models made of silver or bone, often engraved with the owner's name or motto. Yours, however, is the bathhouse special, industrial bronze, dull-edged and unapologetically thorough. The oil scraper doesn't just exfoliate your skin, he exfoliates your soul. Behind him, another man is being oiled by a boy who can't be older than 12. The kid hums a strange tune while using a sponge to dab oil into the man's knees. It's oddly calming, until you realise he's humming funeral dirge tempo. Once the scraping is complete, the man hands you a cloth and motions toward a corner, where a stone basin trickles with warm water. You splash some over your chest, trying to remove the residue. It doesn't come off easily. Roman bath oil has the cling of social anxiety and the shine of a snail in moonlight. A young woman passes through the chamber. Yes, women were allowed in public baths depending on the hour, the city, and the emperor's mood. Scholars still debate whether bath times were fully segregated, partially rotated, or just total free-for-alls. Today you're seeing what appears to be a co-ed hour, though some Romans would have considered that scandalous. She gives you a mildly pitying glance and continues on, robes tucked tight, heading toward the Tepidarium. You suddenly feel like a towelless child in a world of professionals. The oiled man finishes his work with a slap to your back that nearly knocks the breath out of you. Good for the blood, he says in Latin. Or maybe it was your liver looks pale. You're not sure. Either way, he disappears into the steam, strigil gleaming like a weapon from a gladiator's locker. You wobble a bit, shiny and violated, before finding your footing. Around you, more bathers are mid-scrape, forming an oddly rhythmic chorus of grunts, slaps, and muttered oaths. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you wonder why we ever gave up this ritual. And then you remember, loofahs exist now. As you move toward the doorway marked by a mosaic of dolphins, you pass a small side chamber filled with baskets of herbs. Lavender, bay leaf, rosemary. A slave is stirring them into a pot of steaming water, which fills the air with a smell that temporarily distracts from the aroma of feet and ambition. You pause for a moment and breathe in. The steam, the scents, the strange combination of warmth and vulnerability. It's oddly soothing, in a very Roman way. Then a voice behind you booms, "Make way!" You turn just in time to dodge a man carrying a goat. Yes, a goat. Apparently, some patrons bring animals for reasons. Theories range from religious rituals to natural exfoliants. The jury's out on that one. Feeling thoroughly greased and emotionally tenderized, you continue through the archway, following the trail of humid air toward the next chamber. Because up next, the Tepidarium. And you're about to discover that warm rooms can be just as treacherous as hot tempers. You shuffle forward, still gleaming faintly like a well-basted chicken, and step into the Tepidarium, the so-called warm room. That sounds inviting, doesn't it? Like the Roman version of a gentle hug. Maybe a cosy chamber where you can sit, unwind, and let the awkwardness of being scraped by a stranger fade into distant memory. Nope. The moment you pass through the arched doorway, your nostrils fill with a sour humidity that clings to your throat. It's not hot, not cold, just unsettlingly wet. Like being wrapped in a damp wool blanket that someone already sneezed into. The air is thick with steam, but not enough to hide what's happening around you. The room is bathed in a hazy golden glow from oil lamps embedded into the walls, their flames flickering like they too are trying to escape. Columns rise into the mist, holding up a painted ceiling so covered in condensation it started to peel. You wonder how long it's been since anyone gave it a fresh coat. The floor is a clever mosaic of geometric shapes, intended to delight the eye, or maybe just distract you from the fact that it's always a little slippery. You tiptoe cautiously, wondering how so many elderly Romans managed not to wipe out in here. Here's the trap. The Tepidarium is where time stops. It's the liminal space of the bathhouse, the intermission between the cold plunge and the full-on sauna experience. You're supposed to relax here, maybe chat a bit, sweat a little, and prepare your body for the inferno that lies ahead. But for you, unacclimated and confused, it's like sitting in the inside of someone else's cough. You spot a few people reclining on built-in benches, casually dabbing their foreheads with cloth soaked in scented water. One man snoring softly, mouth wide open, while another is absent-mindedly trimming his toenails with a curved blade. You decide to sit carefully on a ledge that's already damp and oddly warm. A bowl of warm oil is passed down the line. A man dips his fingers in, rubs it behind his ears, and then offers it to you. You hesitate, but politely comply. It smells faintly of basil and boiled celery. The texture is somewhere between salad dressing and regret. Nearby, two women are discussing a legal dispute over property lines. Their voices echo slightly in the chamber, giving their argument the gravitas of a courtroom drama. One points emphatically at the other with a wet sponge. You try not to stare. Fun historical note, the Tepidarium wasn't just transitional. It was architectural brilliance. Heated from below by a Hypocaust system, essentially an underfloor furnace, this room maintained a steady warmth that softened muscles and opened pores. Romans believed it was good for digestion, circulation, and perhaps gossip. A large man in his 50s slides into place beside you, sighs deeply, and proceeds to crack every joint in his body one by one. When he reaches his toes, you flinch audibly. He looks over, grins, and offers you a date. The fruit, not the social engagement. You politely accept and immediately regret it. It's warm, uncomfortably warm. To your right, a boy who can't be more than 10 is fanning an older woman with a palm frond. He's doing so with the determined seriousness of someone tasked with cooling royalty. The woman gives you a glance that might be disapproval or sympathy. It's hard to tell. Everyone here wears the same expression of dignified suffering. You try to breathe more deeply. The air tastes faintly metallic. You blink the sweat out of your eyes and notice that your fingers have begun to prune. Didn't expect that so soon, did you? There's an alcove to the side where two older men are locked in what appears to be a chess match using carved seashells and muttered insults. Occasionally one slaps the stone table and proclaims victory. The other grumbles something about cheating. The game resets. The cycle continues. This room, you realise, is more than just a waiting area. It's where the bathhouse politics begin. Here, business deals are floated, alliances formed, secrets traded. Everyone is listening to everyone else, even when they pretend not to be. A senator enters, flanked by two attendants. He sweeps into the room like a man who owns the steam. People shuffle slightly to make space, not because he demands it, but because he expects it. He doesn't speak, just sits, folds his arms, and closes his eyes. Power naps, Roman style. You're starting to feel drowsy yourself. The combination of heat, low voices, and repetitive dripping from the ceiling is hypnotic. Somewhere, water trickles continuously, probably a clever fountain system, but it feels like a lullaby on loop. Scholars remain divided on just how public baths really were. While technically open to all social classes, evidence suggests the wealthier patrons often claim the choicest corners, while the poor had to make do with the noise, crowding, and smellier sides of the room. Judging by your current position next to a man flossing with what appears to be horsehair, you may not be on the upper tier. You glance toward the next doorway. The mist is thicker there, the light dimmer. You see silhouettes, slow, deliberate movements. People emerging from the next chamber looking dazed, red-faced and slightly singed. That must be the sudatorium, the Roman equivalent of a steam oven. You stand slowly, bones creaking a little under the ambient dampness. You're warm now, too warm. You want to stretch, maybe cry, definitely lie down, but forward you go. Because surviving a Roman bath means taking the heat, literally. The doorway to the sudatorium gapes before you like the mouth of some steam-breathing beast. A few moments ago, you thought the Tepidarium was the worst of it. That unsettling warm damp that clung to your skin like bad advice. But stepping into this next chamber makes the last one feel like a breezy picnic in the countryside. Your foot crosses the threshold, and instantly your lungs protest. The air in here is hot. Not just warm, furnace hot. The kind of heat that feels personal, like it has a vendetta against your entire respiratory system. Within seconds, you're sweating again, as if your skin didn't just endure a full-body oil massage and strigil attack. You gasp, but your breath comes shallow, like inhaling soup. This is the sudatorium, the Roman steam room, and it doesn't mess around. The steam comes from hot water being splashed on heated tiles or metal plates, a process as simple as it is brutal. The heat rises from the floor and clings to the walls, condensing and dripping like a tropical rainforest inside a locked closet. Someone nearby coughs, someone else groans. You've barely entered, and you already want out. Around the chamber, men sit or lie back on stone benches, slick, gleaming, and in varying stages of heat stroke. Their faces are pink, their eyes half closed. One man is muttering poetry about volcanoes, possibly as a warning. You don't understand Latin well enough to be sure. You move deeper in, wiping your face constantly. The sweat drips from your eyebrows straight into your eyes. There's no airflow, not a whisper of breeze, just layers and layers of stagnant steam. You wonder if this is what soup feels like right before it boils. A boy walks past carrying a copper basin and wearing an expression of deep spiritual suffering. He sprinkles water on the coals in the corner, which hiss violently. A fresh cloud of steam erupts, swallowing him momentarily. When he reappears, he looks even more disheartened, as if he's slowly melting into the marble. You grab a spot on one of the lower benches. Higher levels mean higher heat, and you're not trying to reenact Pompeii just yet. The bench is searing. You yelp and bounce up, pretending to stretch. A man beside you snorts and mutters something about soft Westerners. You nod and sit anyway, because pride is stronger than second-degree burns. Historically, the sudatorium was considered essential for a full bathing experience. Romans believed the intense sweating purged impurities, both physical and moral. Think of it as detox, with a side of dehydration and social pressure. You're now in the middle of it, sweating, blinking, and wondering why no one's invented windows yet. To your left, two men are debating military reforms. One is gesturing wildly, the other just keeps wiping his forehead with a wet cloth that looks like it once had colour. Every now and then they pause to dunk their hands into a bucket of tepid water between them, then fling the water onto their legs with a satisfied grunt. To your right, someone is singing softly, a slow, meandering melody that drifts lazily through the haze. You can't tell where it's coming from. For a moment it feels dreamlike, until someone behind you sneezes directly into the steam. You close your eyes and accept your fate. Quirky sidebar, in some cases elite Romans added herbs, flowers and even wine to the steam water. There are fringe theories that some particularly wealthy bathers insisted on rose steam only. Whether that's exaggerated or not, you can't help but wonder if it would improve the current experience, because right now it smells mostly like overcooked lettuce and ambition. Minutes pass, maybe hours. Time is weird in the sudatorium. You lose the sense of how long you've been sitting, or whether your skin has fused to the bench. Everything is moist. Your fingertips look like raisins. You try to adjust your posture and slip, nearly colliding with the man beside you. He grunts. You apologise. He says nothing. And then the chanting begins. Somewhere near the back, a group of older men are murmuring a ritual hymn. You don't recognise the words, but the rhythm is steady and slow, almost trance-like. It builds and fades in waves. Maybe it's religious. Maybe it's just their way of distracting themselves from the fact that they are cooking. Scholars still debate whether the sudatorium was always part of standard bathhouses or only featured in the more elaborate complexes. But archaeological evidence suggests that these sweat chambers were as popular as they were punishing. Some inscriptions even suggest competitions. Who could last the longest? You're already sure you wouldn't win. Your body starts sending signals. Your hands tremble slightly. Your pulse thumps in your ears. A philosophical question emerges. Is this cleansing or torture? You decide you've had enough. You rise, slowly, carefully, like a newborn deer learning to walk, and make your way toward the exit. The doorway shimmers ahead like salvation. As you stumble into cooler air, your body gives a grateful shudder. You survive the sudatorium. Barely. But don't get too comfortable, because next comes the Frigidarium, a cold plunge that promises to jolt you straight into the next dimension. You barely make it out of the sudatorium, dripping like a thawed fish, and gulp down your first deep breath of air that isn't steeped in human broth. For a moment, your body vibrates with relief. You've escaped the Roman steam chamber and lived to tell the tale. Sort of. But now, your vision narrows to the chamber ahead. The Frigidarium, the cold plunge, the Roman reality check. The doorway is carved in stone, flanked by 2 stone dolphins with unnerving expressions, somewhere between playful and predatory. You inch closer, the air noticeably cooler now, cutting through your sweat-soaked skin like needles of early spring. It's invigorating, and also vaguely threatening. Inside, the room opens into a vaulted, domed space. Columns circle a central pool of still, icy water that glows faintly in the dim torchlight. There's a hush in here, broken only by the occasional splash, and the gasps of poor souls who've just thrown themselves into the icy depths. The water is so clear you can see the mosaic tiles at the bottom, blue and white spirals that seem to swirl if you stare too long. Around the edges, men linger on stone benches, shivering, muttering, or trying to psych themselves up for the plunge. Others emerge dripping, hunched, looking like they've just seen Neptune himself. You take a tentative step in. The stone floor is freezing. Your toes curl in protest. You look around to see if anyone else seems alarmed, but of course they're Roman. These people eat fermented fish sauce for fun. They bathe in discomfort. A short, square man claps you on the back, nearly knocking you into the water. First time, he grins. You nod. Just jump. If you think, you freeze. Then he cannonballs into the pool with a war cry that echoes off the dome. You stand there blinking, blinking, blinking. A lanky man walks past you and simply drops in with all the enthusiasm of a condemned man. He doesn't even scream. Just sinks. Okay, you can do this. Just a quick dunk, mind over body. You take a deep breath, close your eyes, and step forward. The cold hits like divine punishment. It's not just cold, it's Roman cold. The kind that bypasses your skin and goes straight to your soul. Your lungs forget how to work. Your heart forgets how to beat. For a second, you're sure you've time-travelled directly into a glacier. You surface with a gasp that could raise the dead. Around you, bathers nod approvingly. One gives you a thumbs up. Another mutters something about purifying the liver. You clutch the edge of the pool, trembling, wondering if you're now sterile. Historically speaking, the Frigidarium wasn't just a shock chamber, it was a symbol of self-control. Roman stoicism in action. To endure discomfort and emerge stronger. Some emperors reportedly built extra cold plunges, with ice imported from mountains just to show how unbothered they were. Rich people have always had strange flexes. You wade toward the shallower side, your teeth chattering like castanets. Across the pool, a group of bathers are whispering about a recent scandal, something about a magistrate's mistress and a missing amphora of wine. Every so often someone yells "non mihi culpa," not my fault, and the others laugh like it's a running joke. You linger in the water longer than expected, not because it's comfortable, it's definitely not, but because the shock has numbed you into a strange kind of serenity. You've crossed the threshold, you're now one of them, a survivor of all 3 bathing zones, warm, hot and cold. You've been oiled, scraped, steamed and chilled. Your skin might never forgive you. Suddenly, someone beside you hurls a bucket of cold water over their own head and sighs like they've just achieved enlightenment. You can't tell if they're meditating or hallucinating. Either way, you feel oddly connected. Here's a lesser-known tidbit. Some Roman physicians believed alternating hot and cold bathing could balance the body's internal humours. A good bath wasn't just about cleanliness, it was about cosmic alignment. If you were sneezing too much, or getting angry easily, maybe your bile needed a little ice bath. Logical? Debatable? Dramatic? Absolutely. But no scholarly theory can explain what happens next. Because just as you're climbing out, shivering and triumphant, someone grabs your ankle. You panic. Briefly. But it's just a child, maybe 7 or 8, floating lazily beneath the surface like a smug dolphin. He smirks, lets go, and swims off. No one else even notices. You dry off with a cloth so coarse it could double as sandpaper. Your skin is red, sensitive, and humming. You're alive, but barely. Then, as you're catching your breath on the bench, a bathhouse worker informs you there's an available massage table should you desire one. You do not desire one, but you're herded there anyway. And now, slick, trembling and half-frozen, you prepare for yet another round of Roman hospitality, where relaxation often feels indistinguishable from violence. You're still damp, barely coherent, and your internal organs haven't fully recovered from the frigidarium, when a man in a tunic, so sheer it might legally be a suggestion, ushers you toward a curtained alcove. You try to resist. You try to signal with your eyes, "Please, I've had enough for 1 century," but he's not interested in protest. "Massage now," he says, in a tone that makes it sound like a divine commandment. You shuffle forward, praying for mercy. The room is dim. It smells of bay leaves and something that might be goat butter. An oil brazier hisses softly in the corner, illuminating a sturdy wooden table covered with a linen cloth that's seen better, cleaner days. Standing beside it, a masseur, shirtless, square-jawed, built like a retired centurion with opinions. He gives you a grin that somehow manages to be both reassuring and ominous. "Lie down," he says in perfect Latin, and slaps the table like it owes him money. You obey, belly first. The linen is warm. Too warm. You immediately wonder what, or who, was on this table before you. The massage begins. Now, in your modern imagination, you might envision soft hands relaxing oils, maybe pan flute music. Roman massages are not that. Roman massages are an event. He starts with your shoulders, not gently. He digs in like he's trying to excavate a memory. You grunt. He pushes harder. Your spine cracks audibly, which earns you an approving nod. "Ah," he says, stiff from travel. "Yes, let's call it that." He moves to your lower back and begins something that can only be described as a controlled assault. Elbows, knuckles, forearms, everything is fair game. You try to keep still, but your feet jerk involuntarily each time he finds a new knot, which seems to happen every 3 seconds. Historical fact. Massages in Roman baths weren't just for pleasure. They were believed to promote blood circulation, detoxify the body, and realign humours. Some even saw them as a form of medicine. Rich patrons had their own private massage slaves, often trained to target specific ailments. You, on the other hand, have someone who seems to believe pain is the fastest path to enlightenment. He hums as he works. It's a low, tuneless sound, like someone trying to remember the lyrics to a funeral chant. You grit your teeth as he digs into your calves. You may never walk again. Then comes the oil. More oil. He pours it directly onto your back, then spreads it with both hands in slow, deliberate circles. The temperature is comfortable, but the scent is complicated. Something between pine resin and overripe olives. You breathe through your mouth. "Gladiators like this oil," he says proudly. "Strong smell, clears the brain." It's clearing more than that. You're pretty sure your sinuses have resigned from your face. As he kneads your arms, he launches into a story about a famous gladiator who once dislocated his own thumb just to win a match. He laughs heartily. You make a noise that might be agreement, or might be whimpering. A second man enters, smaller, wiry, with sharp eyes and a towel over one shoulder. He begins massaging your feet without a word. His fingers are fast, precise, and possibly psychic. For a moment, it almost feels good, until he presses a spot on your heel that sends lightning up your spine. "Ah," he says, "tension in the kidneys." You stare at the stone wall and wonder what the return policy is on Roman medical advice. Here's the fringe bit. There's evidence that some massage oils were infused with animal fat, powdered herbs, and in rare cases, ground minerals. A few fringe historians argue that particularly ambitious bathhouses experimented with eagle talon extract or even crushed pearls. Whether for exfoliation or status, no one can agree. You're 78% sure your oil contains basil and trauma. The masseurs switch sides, whisper something to each other, probably a joke at your expense, and then move to your upper thighs. You tense instinctively. One chuckles. "Don't worry," he says. "We skip the scandalous bits, unless you pay more." You do not pay more. Finally, with one last flourish, they pat you down with a warm cloth and declare you properly softened. You lie there, stunned, unsure if you've just been pampered or mugged. They help you sit up and hand you a cup of water, which you down in one gulp. It's warm and slightly metallic, but you've never tasted anything more divine. "Now," the larger one says, clapping your shoulder. "Toilet?" You blink. "Toilet," he repeats, nodding toward a low corridor lined with terracotta piping and the unmistakable sound of trickling water. Apparently your day isn't over. You try to thank them, but your voice cracks. Your legs barely work. Your back feels like it owes someone a favour. But you manage to shuffle upright and start walking, naked and oiled, toward the next horror in this endless loop of Roman relaxation. You limp down the corridor like a gladiator who just lost a very polite duel, dazed and oiled, legs wobbling from the Roman full-body chiropractic surprise session you just survived. The further you go, the stranger it gets. The marble fades into rougher stone. The lights grow dimmer. The air is still humid, but tinged with something more earthy. You know what's coming. You don't want it. But it's happening anyway. The Roman toilet, the latrina, the ultimate betrayal of personal space. You round the final corner and step into a long, echoing hall lined with low stone benches. Each bench is carved with evenly spaced holes, precisely the width of a Roman rear end. Underneath, a channel of constantly running water carries everything away. In theory. In practice, it just sounds like a haunted stream. There's no privacy. None. No stalls, no partitions, no polite barriers. It's just you, 15 strangers, and an eternal sense of vulnerability. Someone sneezes. Someone else groans. A man across from you is making direct eye contact while discussing real estate. You haven't even sat down yet, and you already missed the sudatorium. You find a spot and hover awkwardly, trying to figure out the logistics. A nearby man notices your confusion and kindly, too kindly, hands you a sponge on a stick. He says a word that loosely translates to cleanser, and then gestures toward the trough running along the floor. You look at it. You look at the sponge. You look at the water. You die a little inside. Yes, this is the infamous Tessorium, Rome's reusable communal sponge, rinsed between uses in a vinegar water solution. Allegedly. Scholars still debate whether it was truly communal, or if most people brought their own. The jury's out, but looking at this thing, you're hoping for personal hygiene optimism over communal convenience. You sit down. The stone is cold, very cold. You think about the architectural achievement here, engineered water flow, ventilation and acoustic design. Then you realise the acoustics are too good. Every plop, every shuffle, every cough echoes like a trumpet blast in a cathedral. Someone is humming, someone else is whistling. A man next to you turns and begins complaining at length about his nephew's gambling debts. You try to nod supportively while maintaining the last shred of your dignity. The truth is, this was never just a restroom. It was a social space. Romans treated the latrina like a salon. People shared gossip, business advice, philosophy and digestive tips while going about their personal release. A group of elderly men across the way are playing a dice game on a makeshift table while relieving themselves. Occasionally one leans forward to shout about military service reforms or the price of olive oil. It's all very democratic. You reach for the sponge. You pause. You reconsider. You opt instead for a strategic shuffle and a mental note to burn your soul later. Here's your quirky tidbit. There are records of pranksters, yes, even in ancient Rome, who would replace the sponge vinegar water with straight seawater or even urine, just for laughs. You're not sure if that's what you just dipped into, but your skin is tingling in a way that's medically suspicious. The man beside you finishes and rises with the gravitas of a philosopher concluding a lecture. He ties his tunic with practiced grace and offers you a nod. "Nice sitting next to you," he says. You manage a strangled likewise. You finish your business, wash your hands in a secondary basin, well, more of a trickle in a bowl, and dry them on a cloth so stiff it could double as military canvas. Then you're back on your feet, unsure whether to cry or laugh. The hall echoes behind you as you walk away, forever changed. You survived the Roman public toilet. You used a shared sponge. You made eye contact through it all. You're now, by Roman standards, a fully initiated citizen. You emerge back into the main corridor and lean against a column, trying to gather your thoughts and your sense of self. A young man approaches with a tray of honey cakes. Yes, now they offer food. He smiles. You must be hungry. You want to say, I just sat next to a man who solved a tax dispute mid-defecation, but instead you nod and take a cake. It's actually delicious. Sweet, spiced and absurdly fluffy. You chew in silence, thinking about everything that's happened. You've been steamed, scraped, submerged, crushed and humiliated. And yet, you're still here, somehow. But your day in the Roman bathhouse isn't done, because now it's time to return to the social chambers, to sit, listen, and try your best to blend in among the chattering elite. Philosophers, gossip mongers, and retired generals who treat small talk like blood sport. You take a deep breath, you head back in, and yes, you keep your distance from anyone still holding a sponge. You shuffle back into the central hall of the bathhouse, now wearing a slightly haunted expression and clutching a honey cake like it's a security blanket. You've been through the full cycle. Stripped, oiled, steamed, frozen, pummeled, and, let's not sugarcoat it, emotionally compromised by a sponge. Surely now it's time to go home. Nope. Now comes the part that's somehow both the quietest and most mentally exhausting, the lounge phase. The main social chambers of the bathhouse are designed less for bathing and more for bonding. Picture a Roman version of a hotel lobby mashed together with a TED talk and a political cocktail party, all wrapped in steam and olive oil. You follow the flow of half-dressed patrons into a wide chamber with vaulted ceilings, padded couches and mosaics depicting mythological scenes that may or may not be coded commentary about current politics. Statues of gods watch you with the blank-eyed judgment of beings who've seen too much. The air is thick with the scent of herbs, spiced wine and fresh figs. Bowls of snacks, yes, snacks, are being passed around by silent, barefoot attendants. Someone offers you what looks like roasted chickpeas mixed with something suspiciously chewy. You try one. It's not great. It's also not poison, so you take two more. You find a low couch near the edge of the room and sink down slowly. Everything aches. Your skin hums from residual massage trauma. Your legs feel like they're still vibrating from the cold plunge. Your soul is whispering, maybe we don't do this again. Around you, conversations flow in every direction. A senator is discussing land grants with a retired centurion who has way too many scars to be considered casual. A group of young men are recounting the highlights of a recent gladiatorial match, mimicking sword swings with their spoons. One enthusiastic fellow nearly knocks over a brazier mid-reenactment, and then there's the philosopher table. You spot them instantly, half a dozen older men in various stages of baldness and smugness, gathered around a small fountain debating in hushed, dramatic tones. Their conversation is one part lecture, one part stand-up routine, and one part whispered insult. You can't help but listen. Virtue, one insists, is not taught, but lived. Ah, another replies, but if no one sees it, is it still virtue, or just loneliness with extra steps? A third murmurs, you sound like a stoic with trust issues. You stifle a laugh and almost choke on your chickpea. Fun historical detail. Public bathhouses weren't just for washing. They were also intellectual hubs. Many had attached libraries or reading rooms. Philosophers, teachers, and politicians used them as informal arenas for exchanging ideas. It was networking before LinkedIn, but with fewer togas and more naked judgment. A man plops down next to you. He's sunburned, flushed from the steam, and holding a cup of diluted wine. Without asking, he begins telling you, in exhausting detail, about the collapse of his neighbour's grain warehouse. It leaned too far to the east, he says, because they ignored the augure's warnings. You know augurs, right? Birds, omens, that kind of thing. He waves a hand like he's painting the sky. Anyway, the grain collapsed. Crushed a cart, one donkey dead. Tragic. You nod solemnly, he goes on. And now he wants to sue, but the magistrate's son is married to the daughter of, well, long story short, politics. The man drains his wine, sighs dramatically and leans back. People think the baths are about relaxation, he says. But no, it's about information. You want to know who's sleeping with whom, who's funding what, where the next temple's going up. You come here. You glance around. He's not wrong. In the corner, a teenage boy is whispering something to an older woman with so many rings you wonder if she owns half the city. Nearby, a bearded man is drawing a map in spilled wine on a stone table, while two others nod. Another is writing a poem on a wax tablet, occasionally pausing to quote Virgil and look dramatically into the middle distance. Here's your quirky twist. Some bathhouses were so central to daily life that missing a visit could be seen as suspicious. If you skipped a few days, people might start spreading rumours that you were sick, cursed, or plotting something shady. Your social presence in the steam mattered, which is why, perhaps, everyone's here, even if no one's particularly relaxed. A server approaches with a tray of sweet wine. You accept it reflexively and sip. It's syrupy and warm, spiced with something like cinnamon and regret. The man beside you grins. Best in the city, unless you go to the Caracalla baths, but who wants to walk that far? You nod again, mechanically. You've stopped processing half of what people are saying. You're too busy keeping track of how many times you've nearly been accidentally included in a conspiracy. Eventually, the philosopher group starts arguing louder. One pounds the table. There must be universal truth. Someone else throws a fig at him. It's shockingly accurate. You lean back and let the chaos roll over you. You've reached a strange kind of equilibrium now. You're no longer the outsider. You're just another semi-conscious person eating olives, trying not to get recruited into someone's illicit marble import scheme. But don't fall asleep just yet, because you've still got to survive the loudest dinner conversation of your life. Just when you think the volume in the lounge can't get any louder, it does. Because now it's dinner time. Or rather, pre-dinner time somehow within the bathhouse, which means everything shifts into a slightly more chaotic gear. An attendant claps loudly, once, twice, and within moments, low tables are being brought in, trays of food are shuffled from hidden alcoves, and cushions are tossed onto the stone benches like someone's throwing a toga-themed birthday party. It's clear this isn't some quick bite before heading home. This is a meal. You're motioned over to join a group already seated around a three-sided table setup, a triclinium they call it. Reclining is encouraged. So is shouting across the table. So is having extremely strong opinions about cheese. You lie down awkwardly on your side, elbow digging into a too-flat cushion, and try to adopt the traditional Roman dining posture, casual, confident, and ideally well-oiled. You succeed at none of the three. The food starts arriving. First, there's garum, that legendary fermented fish sauce that smells like something that used to have ambition, and then gave up halfway through. It's served in small bowls, generously drizzled over everything from boiled eggs to chopped leeks. You take a cautious bite. It's salty, it's sour, it tastes like betrayal. Then come platters of figs, olives, roasted nuts and bread so hard it could be used for construction. A man next to you tapses with a knuckle and jokes, "Still warmer than the Senate." You laugh politely and try not to break a tooth. Wine flows freely. Not the rich, bold reds you might expect, but light, sour wine watered down to make it civilized. It tastes like someone made grape juice angry. You sip anyway. It helps dull the garum. Across from you, a man is holding court like a lounge comedian. He's animated, expressive, and in the middle of describing a runaway cow that supposedly wandered into a religious procession last week. The augurs try to interpret it as a sign from Jupiter, he cackles, but I think the cow was just late for her own bath. Everyone laughs. You do too, though it's partially out of fear. Here's the mainstream fact. Meals at the bathhouse weren't unusual. While not all complexes had formal dining areas, the larger, fancier ones often hosted social meals as a way to extend the experience. For many Romans, bathing, socializing and feasting all blended together into one long ritual of public life. They didn't separate cleanliness from community, or food. You nibble on a skewer of grilled lark. Yes, lark, trying to ignore the tiny crunchy bones, while the conversation beside you shifts to politics. Specifically, whether a certain local magistrate can be trusted to handle grain tariffs when he still owes back taxes to his brother-in-law. You have no context, but the passion is admirable. The loudest voice at the table belongs to a man with a massive beard and exactly one eyebrow. He's holding a half-eaten pear and gesturing with it like it's a scroll of divine authority. The Republic is rotting, he declares, then takes a bite. Juice dribbles into his beard. No one blinks. Quirky detail. Some bathhouse diners believed certain foods had humoral impacts on the body. Cold foods cooled the temper. Hot ones fired up the blood. Some went so far as to eat according to mood. Too angry. Have some cucumbers. Too lazy. Try peppered goat liver. You wonder which mood is cured by mystery meat wrapped in fig leaf, but decide not to ask. A young man beside you suddenly turns, mid-chew, and says, "You look new. What do you think of Roman hygiene?" You open your mouth to answer, but he barrels ahead anyway. "Personally, I think the sudatorium is the greatest invention in human history. Opens the mind, clears the soul. You know what's wrong with the Greeks? Not enough steam." You nod slowly. He continues. "And the Frigidarium? Ha! Nothing reminds you that you're alive quite like nearly dying of cold. It's philosophical. Profound, really. You decide not to mention that you're still recovering from it emotionally. Meanwhile, across the table, someone starts singing. Not a full song, just fragments of an old Roman tavern tune, slurred and cheerful. He bangs on the table in rhythm. A few others join in. One starts clapping. Another throws an olive pit. The volume swells. And then, out of nowhere, someone lets one rip. Audibly. Proudly. There is a pause, then uproarious laughter. Even the bearded pear man applauds. Welcome to the Roman dinner table. You learn quickly that bathhouse etiquette isn't what you thought. Bodily noises are just another kind of punctuation. Loud conversation is a sign of social vitality. Reclining awkwardly with one sandal missing? Normal. You relax, just a little. Maybe it's the wine. Maybe it's the company. Maybe it's the fact that the garum has finally numbed your sense of smell. But for the first time since arriving, you're not thinking about your missing tunic or how many strangers have seen you at your worst. You're just present, full, buzzed, and surrounded by half-naked strangers yelling about politics. And yet, somehow, dinner isn't even the peak of bathhouse socializing, because now it's time for the evening entertainment. And if you thought the food was strange, wait till you see what passes for culture around here. You lean back against a too-warm cushion, your belly full of honey cakes and salted lark bones, your mouth faintly tingling from the fermented fish sauce still lingering in your molars. The conversation around you has reached a lull, briefly, a philosophical hiccup in an otherwise unbroken stream of noise, and then, without ceremony, the entertainment begins. A young man, barefoot, thin as a reed, and clearly enjoying himself, leaps onto the low platform at the centre of the hall. Someone claps twice, and just like that, everyone turns their attention to him. The mood shifts. You sit up slightly, adjusting your recline. Your muscles protest. The performer lifts a hand, strikes a pose like a marble statue, and begins a dramatic reading of something that sounds suspiciously like a comedic poem about constipation. You're not imagining this. The first stanza alone includes references to Jupiter's clogged blessings, Mercury's mischievous bowels, and a very vivid metaphor involving a donkey, a clay pot, and a thunderstorm. The audience loves it. You look around in stunned silence as grown men, statesmen, scholars, people who just earlier were discussing the ethics of public finance, wipe tears of laughter from their eyes. A woman 2 couches down is choking on a fig. Welcome to post-dinner Roman bathhouse entertainment. Part poetry slam, part burlesque comedy, and all unapologetically weird. The performer finishes with a flourish, bows, and tosses a grape into the crowd, which is caught mid-air by the man with the loudest laugh. Of course. Everyone applauds. Then a second performer steps up. She's older, dressed in a loosely wrapped toga dyed a faded purple, which may or may not have once been expensive. She launches into a story, half riddle, half parable, about a dishonest olive merchant who sells vinegar as perfume. The moral seems to be smell carefully and trust no one. The audience nods solemnly. Fun historical note. Roman bathhouses often hosted a rotating cast of entertainers, from musicians and poets to dancers and mimes. Wealthier patrons might even pay to bring their own performers, flexing their status like modern VIP lounge guests who bring their own DJ. The room heats up again, not literally this time, but socially. Another poet recites something tragic about a soldier who fell in love with a statue. It's surprisingly moving, until the punchline reveals the statue was actually a disguised tax official. Everyone howls with laughter. You sip another watered-down wine and squint at the next act. 2 men wrestling in slow motion, wearing masks carved to look like sea creatures. It's either high-concept art or a physical metaphor for bureaucracy. Possibly both. Scholars remain divided on how often these performances lean toward lowbrow comedy versus high-minded philosophy. Judging by tonight's lineup, Rome did not draw a hard line between fart jokes and metaphysics. Suddenly, a musician appears, his lyre slightly out of tune, his expression deeply apologetic. He begins to play a gentle melody that somehow cuts through the noise, silencing even the most intoxicated of patrons. The tune is haunting, beautiful, and mournful in that way only ancient music can be. One part lullaby, one part eulogy. As he sings, you notice a change in the crowd. Conversations quiet, heads bow slightly. Even the fig choker stops mid-chew. The song tells the story of a young woman waiting for her husband to return from war, counting the days by carving lines into a fig tree. He never returns. The tree, over time, bears sweeter fruit. The message is unclear, something about love, loss and agriculture, but the mood is strangely touching. You glance at the philosopher's corner. They're nodding sagely, as if to say, yes, this is exactly what we came here for. You've reached the heart of Roman bathhouse culture, where entertainment, reflection, and bodily discomfort swirl together like olive oil and vinegar in a communal sponge bucket. Here's your quirky tidbit of the evening. Some bathhouses reportedly hosted satirical skits lampooning current politicians or social classes. There are even surviving snippets of bathhouse graffiti that suggest impromptu puppet shows or shadow plays. One scratched message reads, "Lucius the Bald cannot sing, but sings anyway. Ouch." Tonight's lineup seems more poetic than puppet-centric, but who knows what the late acts might bring. Suddenly, a brawl nearly breaks out between two men arguing over whether the goddess Diana would beat Mars in a wrestling match if rules were involved. One of them begins quoting Ovid. The other throws a grape. Security, read, a very tired man with a stick steps in just in time. You sit back, exhale, and let your eyes wander to the ceiling. The lamplight flickers against painted scenes of Apollo, Bacchus, and assorted mythical beings who probably never had to deal with any of this. It's all ridiculous, and oddly perfect. Your stomach is full, your head is spinning, you've experienced philosophical debates, digestive poetry, masked wrestlers, and a musical fig tree lament. You've become Roman, almost. But don't celebrate just yet, because what comes next may be the most surreal part of your day. You're about to receive unsolicited medical advice from someone who looks like they harvest teeth recreationally. The entertainment dies down. The poets bow, the masked wrestlers hobble off stage with exaggerated groans, and the musicians retreat into the shadows of the colonnade, their final notes still humming faintly in the air. Around you, the bathhouse crowd begins to shift again, more slowly now, as if digestion is setting in, and everyone's collectively realizing they've eaten far too many fermented plums. You start to rise, assuming this is your cue to flee, but you rise too soon. A hand lands on your shoulder. It's bony, cool, uninvited. You turn and come face to face with a man who looks like he was born in a thunderstorm and never quite dried off. He wears a loosely draped robe, more patches than fabric, and carries a pouch that jingles ominously. His beard is wispy, his fingers are long. His eyes are sharp in the way that makes you sit back down without thinking. He says, "You've got spleen tension." You blink. "Sorry." He nods sagely. "It's in your eyes." The squint. Classic spleen stress. He pulls a small clay vial from his pouch and holds it like a sacred relic. "I can fix it. You're no doctor, but you're fairly certain your spleen isn't in your eyes. Still, it's too late. You've been targeted by the Roman bathhouse medicus ad hoc, the roving bathhouse doctor, or at least someone pretending to be one. You try to protest, but the man is already patting your neck with something damp and herbal. It smells like mint, vinegar, and what you imagine crushed frog might smell like if left in the sun. You recoil slightly. He clucks his tongue. Resisting is a symptom. Historical side note, not all Roman bathhouses had official physicians, but many unofficial healers frequented them, men who claimed to know the secrets of the body based on years of study, observation, or listening in on real doctors. Some offered treatments, some offered scams. The difference wasn't always clear. This one offers you a choice, a back alignment using a sacred twig, a liver rub involving goose fat, or, his personal recommendation, a brief bleeding from the upper arm. You laugh, assuming it's a joke. He does not laugh back. "I take cheese or coin," he says, as if that's a perfectly normal phrase. You stammer something about not being hungry, and he frowns as if that too is a symptom. "Dry tongue," he says. "Kidneys in rebellion." He reaches into his pouch again. Quirky fact, it was once believed that body humours could be balanced by strategic bleeding, and while many physicians used knives or leeches, others employed heated cups or even fish bones. The method varied, but the goal was always the same: get the bad stuff out. Your guy pulls out what looks like a curved bronze spoon. "Just a nick," he says, tapping the inside of your elbow. "Let the bad wind escape." You thank him, decline, and try to stand. He steps closer. "I also offer tooth pulling," he whispers. You sit back down. Across the room, a small crowd has gathered around another medicus who's loudly demonstrating how to reset a dislocated thumb using a wine jug and a scream. People are taking notes, someone sketching it on a wax tablet. You glance around for a real doctor. No such luck. Eventually, your persistent healer seems to give up on you, muttering something about closed chakras, or maybe clogged channels, your Latin slipping, and retreats to find his next patient. You breathe a sigh of relief and mop your brow with a towel that smells faintly of lavender and ash. Then someone else appears beside you. A woman this time, wearing a wreath of laurel and carrying a tray of clay charms. She gives you a knowing look and says, "You should wear a boar-tooth pendant. It wards off intestinal weakness." You nearly scream. It's open season now. You're a magnet for amateur healers. A man passes with a basket of dried herbs, muttering thyme for fevers, marjoram for melancholy. Another hands you a scroll offering digestive realignment through vocal vibrations. One man tries to press a warm pebble into your palm and tells you to sleep with it under your tongue. And here's the kicker. Some of this actually works. Maybe. Sort of. Scholars remain divided on the real efficacy of Roman folk medicine. While elite doctors like Galen wrote treatises on anatomy and surgical procedures, most day-to-day remedies were deeply rooted in tradition, superstition, and trial and error. Sometimes the difference between quackery and cure was simply who delivered it with more confidence. You managed to shuffle away from the medical swarm, shielding yourself with a plate of olives and the kind of body language that says, "Please don't realign my blood." You find a quiet alcove far from the herbs, the syringes. Yes, there's a man carrying goat horn syringes, don't ask. And the opinions. You breathe. You're fine. Mostly. Your spleen still feels ambiguous, but your arms are unbled. That's a win. Eventually, a bathhouse attendant walks past and drops a folded linen across your shoulders. It's cool, dry, and smells like nothing at all. For the first time in hours, you're not being steamed, scraped, advised, fed, or shouted at. You're just sitting, and that, in this moment, feels miraculous. But you can't sit for long, because there's a noise building from the next chamber. It sounds like shouting, and is that singing? Of course, you forgot about bathhouse gossip hour, and nothing gets louder than Romans gossiping in a steam-soaked room with no consequences. You follow the sound of raised voices and muffled cackles through a side corridor, linen draped loosely around your shoulders like a cape of thin dignity. Your legs are wobbly, your stomach is still negotiating with the garum, and somewhere in your left shoulder is a phantom pain from that massage elbow 2 sections ago. But nothing could prepare you for the next chamber. It's shaped like a rotunda, with a domed ceiling painted in soft ochre tones. Torches flicker along the perimeter, casting dancing shadows across columns and mosaic floors, but it's the people, not the decor, that dominate the space. Half reclining, half lounging, fully unfiltered, this is the gossip zone. Romans, it turns out, treat gossip like an Olympic sport. The moment you enter, a man with a voice like a broken trumpet bellows, "Did you hear what happened to Marcus the Younger?" And suddenly 10 heads swivel like synchronized swans. You freeze mid-step, not sure if you're supposed to gasp, nod, or pretend you don't understand Latin. A woman near the fountain fans herself and stage whispers, "I told everyone he'd fall. You can't fake grain weights forever." She's wearing more jewellery than clothing, and every time she lifts her hand, something jingles, either as punctuation or warning. You find a seat near the edge, cautious. It's warm, a bit damp, and sticky in a way that suggests several people have already done some very involved lounging here today. A man next to you leans in. He smells like aniseed and roasted onion. They say Sabina. You know, Sabina with the unfortunate forehead. She's been seen 3 times this week with that new scribe from Hispania. You blink. He nods solemnly. At midday, can you imagine? He doesn't explain what's wrong with midday. You assume it's scandalous purely based on his tone. Another person jumps in. And what about the baker's son? The one who keeps leaving those accidental scrolls behind at the gymnasium? Oh, he wants to be caught, says a woman with a wicked smile. The room erupts in knowing laughter. It's like an ancient Roman group chat, but with more togas and fewer emojis. Here's your mainstream historical truth. Gossip in Roman society wasn't just idle chatter. It was currency. With no newspapers, no TikTok, and only unreliable graffiti for updates, the bathhouse was the perfect place to stay in the loop. Reputations rose and fell in these rooms. Relationships were cemented, or destroyed, over whispered rumours and side glances. Someone calls out from the corner, "And have you heard the thing about Titus Flavius's new villa?" A chorus answers, "Which thing?" Apparently there are many things. One man insists the atrium is built entirely from Egyptian marble. Another swears he saw 4 storks nesting in the roof beams. An omen, depending on who you ask. A third leans in and whispers, "The storks are planted, bought from a travelling zoo. No one believes in omens anymore." A fourth man gasps, "That's treasonous talk." The volume rises. A child, no older than 10, wanders in with a tray of figs and somehow ends up in the centre of an argument about naval taxes. You watch as the boy expertly dodges the conversation, refills cups, and leaves without getting drawn into a single conspiracy. You aspire to his level of social evasion. Quirky tidbit time. Roman bathhouse graffiti, yes, there was graffiti, reveals real-life gossip in scratchy Latin. Some surviving examples include, "I screwed the barmaid, and Marcus owes everyone money," as well as the evergreen favourite, "Beware of Lucilla's perfume, it bites." These weren't just jokes. They were public statements made in places where people would absolutely read them. The room you're in now feels like that graffiti came to life, and it doesn't stop. New topics rise like steam clouds. Who's dying, who's faking dying, who tried to buy a priesthood with counterfeit coins, who's secretly Greek, scandalous depending on the neighbourhood, and who is definitely sleeping with someone they shouldn't be. You sip from a cup of watered wine and nod at the appropriate moments. You're not sure who half these people are, but you're learning quickly that names matter less than tone. It's not what someone did, it's how dramatically they're talked about. A man beside you tosses a fig into the air, catches it, and says, "Of course, this is all alleged." No one knows for sure. Everyone nods gravely, then immediately continue as if it were law. Scholars remain divided on whether these gossip sessions served a deeper social function. Some say they helped maintain civic morality by reinforcing community norms. Others argue they were just an excuse for emotional arson. Regardless, they were central to Roman leisure. And the bathhouse was the perfect pressure cooker. You feel your head spinning. The room is too warm. The voice is too fast. Somewhere in the haze, someone is reciting a list of people who probably sabotaged a local aqueduct. Someone else is rating sandals. A third is trying to remember if Jupiter officially frowns on second cousins dating. You decide gently, it's time to slip away. You rise slowly, no sudden movements, and back toward the hallway, trying to look invisible. Someone calls after you. "Leaving already?" You haven't heard the good rumours yet. You smile weakly and wave. You're not sure your brain can hold more scandal without melting. But as you step out of the gossip chamber, one final, ominous realization settles in. You've lost a sandal. And in this bathhouse, that's as good as an invitation for theft, trade, or interpretive dance. You turn a corner, barefoot and bewildered, and prepare yourself for the next trial. Because your Roman bathhouse journey isn't over, and you're not leaving without at least trying to find your missing footwear. You hobble through the corridor like a dazed centurion after battle, one sandal flapping uselessly, the other completely gone, vanished into the steamy ether of gossip and garum. You're barefoot on one side, which is bad enough, but worse is knowing that someone somewhere in the building now has one of your sandals and is either wearing it proudly or trading it for fermented eel. The floor is slick. Every step is a calculated risk. You squint at every passing patron's feet like a paranoid detective, half expecting to see your missing footwear paraded by a smug stranger. You retrace your steps, back past the gossip chamber, past the singers, the couch where a philosopher is now fast asleep with a grape still in his mouth, and past the table where someone is still ranting about grain taxes like the Republic depends on it. No sandal. Then, in the Apoditarium, the changing room where this all began, you finally see it. Kind of. Because there it is. A sandal that looks like yours, sitting in a different cubby than where you left it. Suspiciously scuffed, slightly stretched, and placed beside a tunic that smells like ambition and goat cheese. And standing next to it, a tall, overly moisturized man inspecting his fingernails with great satisfaction. You point to the sandal. He raises an eyebrow. You clear your throat. I believe that's mine. He glances at the sandal, then at you, then back at the sandal. Ah, is it? There is a pause. Here in the bathhouse, this is the equivalent of open warfare. The room quiets just slightly. Someone coughs pointedly. A slave, polishing a bronze mirror, stops mid-wipe to watch. The man shrugs. I found it in the Tepidarium, unattended. You want to scream. Of course it was unattended, it's a shoe. But instead, you summon what remains of your Roman dignity. I left it in that cubby over there, the one with the fish carving. He squints. So? You abandoned it. A nearby bather, clearly enjoying the drama, mutters, "Possession is 9/10 of Roman law." You're not sure that's true, but it sounds official enough to sting. And then the tall man smirks and kicks it toward you. Fine, keep it. It's too small anyway. You lunge, grab it, and hug it like a returning relative. It's damp, it's warm, it's slightly deformed, but it's yours. A few polite claps break out from the changing room peanut gallery. You bow slightly and slip it on. It squelches unpleasantly, but your sense of justice is restored. Fun historical footnote. Sandals in Rome weren't just footwear, they were status indicators. Senators had special footwear, known as calcae, dyed red and often buckled up to the ankle. The more elaborate the laces, the more important the feet inside them. You, meanwhile, are wearing something between commoner chic and field trip disaster. But still, you're commoner chic. As you resecure your other belongings, a wave of quiet pride settles over you. You've survived the theft gauntlet. Sort of. And here's your quirky bathhouse tidbit of the hour. Organised theft in bathhouses was a known issue, so much so that Roman poets wrote about it. Martial in particular famously complained about thieves stealing cloaks and sandals while he bathed. The ancient solution? Hire a slave to stand guard. Your solution? Stand very, very close to your cubby and glare at anyone who sneezes near it. Now rearmed, 2 sandals, 1 damp tunic and a threadbare towel, you begin navigating your way toward the exit, or what you think is the exit. These corridors all look the same after 7 sensory betrayals and several hundred degrees of temperature fluctuation. You pass a side chamber where a man is reading aloud from a scroll to 3 others who appear to be asleep. One wakes only to loudly agree with whatever just got said, then immediately dozes off again. You're almost out. Almost. Until you're intercepted. Again. This time by a man in a crisp toga with the swagger of someone who's definitely drafted several laws and probably broken twice as many. You look like someone with opinions, he says cheerfully. Tell me, would you back a tax on imported figs if it meant we could fund better mosaic repairs? You open your mouth, confused. He presses on. Because frankly, I think the bathhouse floors are disgraceful. I stubbed my toe on Poseidon's beard yesterday. You blink. He squints. You're not a magistrate's aide, are you? You shake your head. He sighs, disappointed. Pity, you look like one. And just like that, he turns and disappears into a hallway filled with debate and sandal squeaks. You're left standing in your reclaimed footwear, questioning everything, including whether fig taxes are, in fact, unjust. This bathhouse, once advertised as a centre of hygiene and relaxation, has revealed itself to be a microcosm of Roman life. Noisy, nosy, theatrical, mildly dangerous, and somehow wonderful. You take a deep breath, you make your final turn, and finally, you see daylight. But before you leave, there's one last hurdle, the exit attendants, and they don't look like they're going to let anyone go without exact change, and a brief philosophical interrogation. You step toward the archway leading out of the bathhouse like a battle-weary hero emerging from an epic farce. The sunlight slants just right. creating a golden path across the stone floor. You're squinting, blinking, half expecting to hear birdsong and maybe a harp flourish. But instead, you're greeted by two men in crisp tunics standing just inside the exit. Both lean against stone columns with the weary authority of people who've been arguing about soap standards since dawn. Their expressions, somewhere between bored bureaucrats and mildly entertained executioners. "Name?" one of them barks. You hesitate. Marcus?" He frowns. "Marcus what?" "Of not from around here?" He sighs dramatically. "Another one?" Second man steps forward. "You received a token at entry. Present it." "Ah, yes. The token. That small, greasy bronze disc the changing room slave gave you hours ago. You dig into your pouch. It's wet, sticky, possibly cursed. But you hand it over with the kind of reverence normally reserved for relics or parking validation. He inspects it, sniffs it. Why? Then bites it. Apparently that's standard. Tepidarium grade, he mutters, then tosses it into a clay jar labelled with a fading dolphin. The first man raises an eyebrow. "No upgraded oils? No private massage suite?" You shake your head, trying not to sound proud of your low-budget suffering. He scribbles something on a wax tablet with the speed and flair of a man who really wanted to be a playwright. Any damage to facilities? Missing linens? Ungrateful attitude? You open your mouth to object, but he waves it off. Standard questions. You're clear. Almost. Then comes the exit advice. It starts like this. Next time, avoid the third bench in the Tepidarium. It leaks. Then, don't sit near the poet with the mole on his cheek. He's been known to rewrite real conversations into tragedies. Also, if you see a woman offering gooseberry wine from a bronze flask, run. You nod at each. You will forget all of it by nightfall. Fun historical insight. These attendants, often slaves or low-ranking administrators, kept track of who entered and left, ensured no one walked off with imperial soap, and occasionally provided feedback on bathhouse conduct. Some bathhouses even issued wooden tokens, tesserae, as admission and checkout slips. Lose one, and you'd better be ready to explain yourself. As you move to pass them, a third man appears, older, greyer, and clearly of a slightly higher rank. His toga is carefully wrapped, and he wears a thin chain of office around his neck. "Leaving so soon?" he asks. You hesitate, wary of more interrogations, but he just smiles. "Did you learn anything?" You blink. He continues. "That's what these baths are for. Learning. From the body. From the people. From the absurdity of it all." He gestures around the atrium where new bathers are now flooding in. Fresh. Clean. Optimistic. You come in thinking you'll get a good scrub. You leave with someone's family secrets, medical advice, a lecture about figs, and, if you're lucky, both sandals. You glance down at your feet. Both sandals. One definitely drier than the other. He chuckles. "You'll be back." You're not so sure, but you smile and nod politely, because the only thing worse than a Roman bathhouse is arguing with a Roman who thinks they've taught you something. As you pass under the arch, the light hits your face fully. For a moment the warmth is gentle. It smells of sun-baked stone and old lavender. You take a deep breath. You're clean. Technically. You're informed. Questionably. You're exhausted. Absolutely. You step onto the main street, blinking at the bustle of the forum ahead. Vendors shout, donkeys bray. Somewhere, a woman is yelling about turnips. You feel reborn and slightly broken, and just as you're preparing to make your escape, a familiar voice calls out behind you. "Hey, you forgot your dried eel tonic." You do not turn around. You walk faster, but the truth is you've just survived something that many modern humans would not. Not the heat, not the nudity, not the fig-based politics. You've survived a full Roman bathhouse experience, and in doing so, you've joined a very strange, very slippery historical club. But don't relax just yet. Because it turns out exiting a Roman bath doesn't always mean your day's over. Sometimes it means you're now expected to dine, again, with the people you just bathed beside. And there's fermented turnip soup involved. You thought walking out of the bathhouse meant freedom, that you'd strut back onto the Roman street, freshly oiled and semi-traumatized, catch your breath, maybe find a quiet place to collapse. But no. Oh no. Because no sooner have you passed the threshold than a cheerful voice rings out behind you. "Sena parata est?" Supper is ready. You freeze. That's not just any voice. That's the voice of the senator who tried to recruit you into a fig tax scandal earlier, and he's pointing at you. Next thing you know, you're being gently but undeniably ushered toward a nearby dining hall adjacent to the bathhouse, a sonetio reserved for the regulars, the bold, the curious, and the people who forgot how to say no. The senator claps you on the back. You've survived the sudatorium, the philosophers, the goat oil, and the sponge. It's only right you earn a reward. You're too tired to argue. The sonetio is a long room lined with couches, torchlight flickering against painted walls. The mural behind the head table features Bacchus tipping a goblet toward a rooster. For some reason no one will explain. The smell? Strong, savoury, and suspiciously sour. The feast is already underway. You're guided to a spot between a merchant who talks with his mouth full and a woman who smells like vinegar and stares at everyone like she's memorising weaknesses. You sit, again adopting that awkward Roman recline, elbow aching, linen tunic sticking to your slightly damp skin. You're one wrong fig away from a nap. A server places a bowl in front of you. It's steaming, it's yellowish, it's turnip soup, and not just any turnip soup. Fermented turnip soup. You glance around to see if anyone else is questioning this. They are not. You dip your spoon in with the caution of a man inspecting a potion. You taste it. It's aggressive, like something that had dreams of being wine but got lost in a root cellar. Fun historical fact. Romans loved fermented foods. They considered them healthy, balanced, and a little bit divine. Fermented turnips, leeks soaked in vinegar, fish sauce reductions, all were staples of a diet that prioritised bold flavours and strong digestion. The logic, if it burns a little, it's working. Across the table, the senator is already monologuing. People don't understand fermented turnips, he says, swirling his spoon like he's addressing the Senate. They're complex, nuanced, alive. Like your legal cases, the vinegar-scented woman mutters. He ignores her and continues, detailing how he once won a property dispute using only a map, a goat, and the promise of a good stew. Meanwhile, the merchant to your left has taken it upon himself to explain how every Roman soup can be traced back to a single Etruscan grandmother, and insist you smell his spoon to confirm. You don't. He still shows you. Here's a lesser-known tidbit. Some Roman recipes included ingredients like honeyed dormice, boiled crane feet, or barley cakes soaked in spiced milk. Not every dinner was a 5-star affair, but each meal was a mix of performance, power play, and digestion roulette. A server brings a second course, cold chickpea porridge with bits of smoked eel. You stare at it for a beat too long, and the woman beside you raises an eyebrow. You don't like eel? I haven't had it in this exact setting. She nods once. Good. It shouldn't be familiar. You eat it anyway. It's chewy. It fights back. You win, eventually. At one point, a musician enters and starts playing the aulos, a double pipe instrument that sounds like two angry flutes arguing with each other. No one reacts. Apparently, this is considered ambiance. The senator leans toward you again. Ever considered a post in public sanitation? You nearly choke on your eel, he beams. You've got resilience. You could go far. You mutter something about being on sabbatical from the olive trade. He nods approvingly. Ah, the olives. Always the gateway. Meanwhile, the merchant begins reciting a poem, unprompted, about the tragic beauty of dry lentils. You zone out somewhere around verse 3. By the time dessert arrives, dates stuffed with pine nuts and rolled in honey, you're no longer certain which century you belong to. You're sweating from soup, blinking from wine, and nodding politely while someone suggests reforms to how street pigeons are managed. Scholars remain divided on whether communal post-bath meals were structured events or informal hangouts. But what's clear is that Romans never missed an opportunity to stretch a social occasion into a civic one. A meal was never just food. It was conversation, persuasion, and mild digestion-based combat. As the feast winds down, the senator raises his goblet. A toast, he announces, to the stranger among us. May his sandals never go missing again. Everyone laughs. You force a smile. Your sandals are still on. You check discreetly, twice. And just like that, the feast dissolves. People stand, stretch, belch, and offer handshakes, cheek kisses, or vague warnings about upcoming eclipses. You're escorted out with the rest, blinking into the evening light stuffed with eel, wine, and civic speculation. You made it. You bathed, you scraped, you plunged, you gossiped, you souped. But there's one final stage to your Roman public bath journey, and it's the one no one ever talks about, the aftermath. You stagger down the stone-paved street just outside the bathhouse like a stunned veteran of an overly polite battlefield. Your stomach is full of fermented turnips, your skin is coated in a fine layer of residual olive oil, and your mind is racing with unsolicited political advice and someone's unsolicited foot poetry. And yet you feel oddly triumphant, that is, until your skin starts to itch. At first, it's just a tickle behind your knee, nothing to worry about. A passing irritation. You scratch it gently and keep walking. Then your shoulder joins in, then your lower back. Then, oh no, your everything is itchy. You stop mid-step in the middle of a street filled with vendors, chickens, and a man arguing with a statue, and you realise with perfect clarity, something you touched in that bathhouse is now touching back. The bathhouse aftermath has begun. You limp your way toward your lodging, some modest domus tucked between a bakery and a scroll shop, and once inside, begin inspecting yourself like a suspicious shipment of imported figs. You've got splotches, you've got redness, you've got what might be a handprint-shaped patch of irritation right where the massage man elbowed your spine. You sit on a stool, you breathe, and then you remember the sponge. You briefly consider screaming into a pillow, but instead you lie back and accept your fate. Here's a little-known but entirely real historical possibility. Roman bathhouses were not sterile environments. Despite the elegance, engineering, and ritual, these places were bustling hubs of humanity, and humanity is a messy species. While the Romans used vinegar, ash, and oils to cleanse and perfume, their understanding of bacteria was, well, poetic at best. There are ancient records, not many, but enough, of outbreaks of rashes and skin ailments in areas surrounding bathhouses. Scholars still debate whether these were due to bad hygiene practices or just a result of everyone sharing the same vat of footwater and optimism. You shift on your bed, trying not to let your tunic chafe whatever has decided to blossom on your thigh. The light outside dims. Somewhere, a street performer begins playing a lyre off-key, a baby cries, a dog barks at the moon, and inside you reflect on your full journey. You remember the entrance, fumbling with coins and dodging gladiators. You remember the Tepidarium, where your modesty was checked at the door, the Tepidarium with its damp, clingy heat, the Sudatorium, where you boiled like a philosophical crab, the Frigidarium, where your lungs briefly evacuated your body, the massage, which left you emotionally rearranged, the communal sponge. You physically shiver. You remember the gossip chamber, where reputations were roasted like chestnuts, and the grand finale, your sandal saga, the supper invitation, the fermented eel, and the senator's very sincere belief that you'd make a good city official. All of it has led to this moment. You, horizontal, exhausted, itchy, and deeply, irrevocably Roman. Your stomach gurgles ominously. You don't know whether it's the eel, the soup, or the emotional stress of being offered a bloodletting in exchange for cheese. Either way, your body's ready to file a formal complaint. Quirky detail of the evening, some Romans believed post-bath dreams were prophetic, that the steam, the oils, and the physical reset made the mind more open to divine messages. Priests and philosophers alike recorded visions after a full thermi experience, visions of battles, lovers, warnings, or, in one famous case, a very stern chicken. So as you drift off in your lamplit room, itching gently and murmuring a quiet never again, your brain begins to wander. You dream you're back in the bathhouse. But this time, you're the doorman, holding the tally stick, judging people by the shape of their sandals and the shine of their oil. You point someone toward the Sudatorium and they scream. A poet hands you a scroll titled Ode to a Rash. Someone offers you soup in a sponge. A goat nods in approval. You awaken with a start. It's still dark. The air is quiet. The street dogs are sleeping. Your rash has not declared full revolution yet. You lie back again, listening to your own heartbeat. You've lived what few modern people ever could. A full day in a Roman public bath. And as your eyes grow heavy, one final truth settles over you like a linen sheet. You'll never look at olive oil the same way again. Morning light creeps through the wooden shutters, soft and golden, like it's trying not to wake you too aggressively. You open your eyes slowly, cautiously, bracing for what your body might feel after yesterday's all-inclusive Roman sensory assault. You lie still for a moment. Are you alive? You wiggle your toes. They work. You flex your fingers, also working. Then you try to sit up, and your spine pops like a string of roasted chickpeas. Ah, there it is. A bathhouse hangover. Every muscle feels like it's been individually judged by Jupiter and sentenced to mild public shaming. Your back is sore in places you didn't even know were places. Your skin is tight and itchy. And your left sandal, despite being by your bed, is still suspiciously damp. You shuffle upright and pour a bit of water from a clay jug into a basin. The splash echoes too loudly in the small room. You glance in the polished bronze mirror. Your reflection is complicated. Your cheeks are slightly sunburnt from the walk home. Your hair is fused into oily clumps in the shape of your straw pillow, and there's a red line across your neck that looks exactly like where the massage table tried to strangle you with a sweat-damp linen. You sigh and splash your face. There's a knock at the door. You freeze. Another knock, this time followed by a familiar voice, the senator from last night. "You're expected at the forum today," he calls cheerfully. "Fig tariffs wait for no man." You consider pretending to be dead, but you know better. You dress carefully. The tunic chafes in new and interesting ways. You add a dash of scented oil, not because you want to, but because you must. Once you've bathed in olive oil in public, you're legally obligated to keep up the facade of a well-greased Roman. Outside, the streets are already buzzing. Vendors shout about bread. A boy chases a chicken down an alley. Someone is singing very off-key about Hercules' liver. You limp toward the forum, trying not to think about the sponge, the soup, or the man who tried to sell you spleen therapy. But then you hear your name, or what passes for your name in this era. Marcus not from around here. You turn. It's the bathhouse doorman. He's holding a bronze tally stick. "You forgot your tally yesterday," he says, slightly accusingly. "Don't want to be banned for negligence." You take it. "Thanks," he nods. "Good. We'll see you again tomorrow." You blink. "Tomorrow?" He raises an eyebrow. "You want to stay dirty?" You shake your head. No, of course not. I'll be there." He smirks and walks off. You're left holding the token like it's a wedding invitation you never RSVP'd to. Here's your historical moment of clarity. The Roman bathhouse wasn't just a once-in-a-while treat. For many citizens, especially city dwellers, it was daily, or at least frequent. It was essential, habitual, ingrained. Part spa, part pub, part post office. A man could bathe, get a legal tip, flirt, bleed, snack, and solve a property dispute all in the same hour. And once you started going, it was hard to stop. You reach the forum and see a familiar group of men arguing beneath a statue of Minerva. One of them waves, another holds up a fig in greeting, and there's the senator again, gesturing toward a scroll. You take your place beside them, still sore, still mildly inflamed, still smelling like yesterday's lunch, and you blend in. Because now you're one of them. You've bathed the Roman way, survived it, been confused by it, maybe even, against all odds, come to appreciate it. You scratch your arm absent-mindedly and wonder, was this rash worth it? Absolutely not. But will you go back? Maybe. Because in Rome, being clean isn't just physical, it's cultural, it's political, it's a shared act of survival. And besides, you left your best towel in the caldarium. You walk home from the forum as the sun dips toward the western hills, the sky blooming with streaks of orange and dusty pink. Your scroll is tucked under one arm, a proposal about fig tariffs you barely understand, and your sandals slap softly against the warm stone of the road. You feel hollowed out. Not in a sad way, more like a wooden bowl that's been sanded, scraped, soaked and oiled. Because that's exactly what you are now, a Roman bowl of a person. Hollowed, polished, and lightly seasoned with social discomfort and lavender oil. You finally reach your domus, ducking under the low arch and into the quiet space of your lodging. It's still warm inside. The stone walls radiate the afternoon heat. A loaf of bread sits untouched on the table. You sit next to it and just stop. There's a silence that only comes after too much. Your skin is slightly less itchy today, but the back of your neck still feels like it's harbouring a passive-aggressive sunburn. Your left thigh is tender from yesterday's unsolicited strigil attack. Your soul? That's been scraped, rinsed, and offered fermented legumes as a reward. You lean back and look at the ceiling. There's a crack up there shaped vaguely like a dolphin. You take it as an omen. For what, you're not sure. Maybe don't trust marble floors. And that's when the real aftermath begins. Not the rash, not the chafing, not the suspicious internal bubbling, but the reflection. You realise the bathhouse wasn't just a place to get clean. It was a collision course with everything Rome had to offer. It was life compressed into a long, slippery afternoon. In the span of a few hours you lost your dignity and your tunic. Experienced multiple temperatures not suitable for humans. Debated tax reform during soup. Were offered a bloodletting in exchange for cheese. Watched a performance about digestive issues. Were publicly accused of sandal abandonment. Survived the communal sponge. And yet, despite all that, a tiny traitorous part of you kind of wants to go back. It's not that you enjoyed being scraped by a stranger or eating chickpea eel paste while someone quoted Virgil. It's that you were inside the Roman machine, fully immersed, simultaneously anonymous and exposed. You were a nobody, and somehow that was freeing. You saw a senator snore through a puppet show. You watched a philosopher trip over a stray cat. You were almost recruited into a public sanitation campaign based on your strong bathing posture. You laugh quietly. And here's a strange truth. For many Romans, this was the rhythm of life. Bath, business, debate, dinner, rumours, repeat. The bathhouse was a civic heartbeat. Not an escape from society, but the core of it. Scholars still debate just how universal this experience was. Did every Roman, regardless of class, really get access to all this? Did women enjoy the same bathhouse chaos? Did children attend the sponge lectures? The evidence is mixed. The archaeology is clear in structure but murky in culture. But one thing is certain. For those who did participate, the thermi were more than just stone and steam. They were society simmering. You stretch slowly, your body creaking like an old barge. You wince as your hip pops. Your skin is tight from residual oil, but less irritated now. You've reached the post-sponge peace stage of recovery. And just as you're about to lie down, you remember. You promised the senator you'd join him at the Subra baths tomorrow morning. Something about evaluating different strigil techniques. You grimace. You will not be doing that. Still, you find yourself wondering, what would it be like to try the Caracalla baths, or those smaller, quieter ones near the aqueducts? Would there be fewer wrestlers, fewer fermented root soups, fewer strangers discussing naval blockades while naked? Probably not. But maybe that's part of the draw, because once you've stepped through that arched doorway into the marble echo chamber of the Roman bathhouse, a part of you doesn't come back the same, and maybe that's the whole point. The next morning arrives slower than the others. The city is waking up again, carts creaking down cobbled roads, doves arguing on rooftop ledges, and somewhere in the distance, a vendor already shouting about his excellent radishes. But inside your room, everything feels still. You lie in bed, wrapped loosely in your linen, staring at the faint patterns of shadow cast by the wooden shutters. Your body is sore but not as much. Your skin's less itchy, your muscles less rebellious. What remains is a kind of deep fatigue that feels earned. You rise carefully, pour some water into your basin, and splash your face. There's a strange gentleness to the act now. No rush, no flinching. Just the simplicity of cold water and your own quiet company. You reach for your tunic and pause. There's a faint scent on it. Old oil, herbs, and that ever-present bathhouse musk that seems impossible to wash out. You breathe it in without wrinkling your nose. You don't love it. But it's familiar. You put it on anyway. No bathhouse today. Not because you're afraid, but because you've finally figured it out. The bathhouse wasn't meant to be conquered. It wasn't some gauntlet to complete once and escape from. It's life, just denser, more crowded, more absurd, a boiling reduction of Roman society. And like life, it's impossible to predict, impossible to win, and deeply, weirdly memorable. You step outside. The street smells like fresh bread and horse dung, equal parts charm and challenge. A neighbour waves. You wave back. You walk. As you pass the grand walls of the bathhouse again, steam curls out from the rooftop vents. The same entrance arch looms open. You watch as a young man fumbles with his coin purse near the doorway. A slave rolls his eyes. Somewhere inside you hear laughter splashing and the distant, unmistakable clink of a strigil. And you smile. because you know exactly what's about to happen to him. He has no idea what's coming. Someone's going to elbow his kidneys in the name of circulation. Someone else will force eel broth into his hands. He'll lose something, tunic, dignity, perspective, and he'll gain something else entirely. And someday, like you, he'll walk out sore, dazed, confused, and somehow grateful. Because if you can survive a Roman public bath, you can survive almost anything. You keep walking. You've got no appointment today, no sponge with your name on it, just a full belly, tired limbs, and the deeply satisfying knowledge that you faced one of history's most infamous social institutions and lived to tell the tale. Barely. And as the noise of the bathhouse fades behind you, so too does the tension in your shoulders. You're not just clean anymore, you're initiated, you're Roman, and you're never going near a communal sponge again. You're lying in your own bed now, hopefully cleaner than a Roman bench and certainly more comfortable. The lights are low, the room is quiet. Maybe there's a soft fan humming somewhere, or just the steady rhythm of your breath. Let it all slow down now. Let the noise of the day fade, the shouts, the splashes, the unsolicited spleen evaluations. Imagine your limbs growing heavier with each breath, not sore anymore, just warm, settled, like sun-warmed stone. The bathhouse is far behind you. You're no longer in the steam. You're no longer being scrubbed by strangers or debating the virtues of goat-based therapy. That was another world. Strange, oily, fascinating, and you made it through. Now there's only calm. No sandaled feet slapping on marble. No fig gossip. No boiling rooms or icy plunges. Just you, wrapped in stillness, floating in this soft in-between space. Breathe in slowly. Breathe out gently. You did well today. You travelled far in time and spirit. You felt the heat, the cold, the sting of vinegar, and the sting of unsolicited poetry. And now you get to rest. Let your muscles soften. Let your thoughts drift. You're safe. You're home. And in the quiet hum of the present moment, the past settles down too. Just a story now, lapping at the edges of your dreams. Sleep well, traveller. End of script. Sweet dreams.